A mother in Tokyo wants her 4-year-old son to stop spending 2 hours a day in front of a screen. In most homes, this becomes a battle. The phone gets confiscated. The tablet gets locked away. The child cries, negotiates, sneaks it back when nobody is watching. The parent feels exhausted and the child feels punished. But this mother does something almost insultingly small. She does not take the screen away. She simply asks her son to stop 5 minutes earlier than yesterday. That is the entire intervention. 5 minutes. And here is what happens over the following months that most Western parents would never predict. The boy does not rebel. He does not notice the change as a loss. Because 5 minutes is too small for his nervous system to register as a threat. And 6 months later, without a single argument, without a single confiscated device, without a single moment of parental willpower being deployed against a child's willpower, his screen time has dropped by more than half. Today I'm going to show you the Japanese concept behind this. Something so quietly powerful that once you understand it, you will never approach your child's habits, your child's mistakes, or your child's behavior the same way again. It is called Kaizen, and it has been quietly raising some of the most self-disciplined children on earth for generations, without force, without shame, and without a single battle of wills. Here is what most Western parenting gets backwards about building habits in children. We believe in dramatic intervention. The screen time rule announced on a Monday morning. The chore chart introduced with great fanfare. The sudden, total elimination of dessert, video games, or staying up late. We want the child transformed by next week. And when the transformation does not happen, when the child resists, negotiates, or quietly reverts within days, we conclude the child is being difficult. But here is what developmental neuroscience actually tells us about why this approach fails almost every single time. A child's brain, like every brain, has a built-in alarm system designed to detect threat and resist sudden change. When a parent announces a dramatic new rule, the child's nervous system does not experience it as guidance. It experiences it as an attack on something familiar and safe. And a nervous system under threat does not cooperate. It resists. This is not defiance. It is biology. The harder a parent pushes for total transformation, the harder the child's brain pushes back. Not because the child wants to win, but because resistance is the nervous system's automatic response to anything that feels like sudden danger. Kaizen offers something the Western model has never offered. A way to build new behavior that is too small for the alarm system to notice. The word itself means continuous small improvement. And in Japanese parenting, it is applied with a precision that Western culture has almost no equivalent for. If a Japanese parent wants a child to reduce screen time, they do not announce a new rule. They reduce it by 5 minutes. If they want a child to read more, they do not assign 30 minutes a night. They ask for 1 page. If they want a child to tidy their room, they do not demand the entire space be cleaned. They ask for 1 toy to be put away before the next one comes out. Each individual change is so small that it feels almost meaningless in the moment. And that is precisely the point. A change too small to notice is a change too small to resist. Here is the neuroscience behind why this actually works. The neural pathways that support a habit, whether helpful or harmful, are built over months and years of repetition. They cannot be demolished in a single dramatic announcement, no matter how firm the parent's tone or how serious the consequence. They can only be gradually rewired, one small repeated action at a time. When change happens in increments too small to trigger the brain's threat detection system, something remarkable occurs. There is no surge of resistance, no emotional explosion, no battle of wills. The new behavior simply begins, quietly, beneath the level of conscious resistance, and with each repetition, the new neural pathway strengthens, while the old one, used slightly less each time, gradually weakens. This is precisely why a child who reduces screen time by 5 minutes a day does not experience it as deprivation. The change is too small to register as loss. But Compounded over 6 months, 5 minutes a day becomes hours of reclaimed time, achieved without a single moment of conflict. There is a second principle working alongside Kaizen that most parenting advice completely misses, and it explains why so many Western behavior charts and reward systems eventually collapse. It comes from a related Japanese concept called ikigai, which translates roughly as one's reason for being, the deep sense of purpose that gives daily life meaning. Japanese parents understand something that Western behavior modification often ignores entirely. A habit, even a problematic one, almost always exists because it is meeting a genuine underlying need. A child who melts down over screen time is rarely addicted to the screen itself. The screen is meeting a need for stimulation, escape, control, or connection that the child cannot yet name. Simply removing the habit without addressing what it was providing leaves a vacuum. And nature, including a child's developing brain, does not tolerate a vacuum for long. The old habit returns because it served a function, even if that function was simply filling empty time or providing familiar comfort. This is why Japanese parents focus on building a replacement habit alongside the gradual reduction, not eliminating the old behavior and hoping nothing fills its place. If a child's screen time is meeting a need for connection, the replacement is not silence and boredom. It is 10 minutes of a parent's full attention at the same time each evening. If the habit is meeting a need for stimulation, the replacement might be a physical activity that provides a similar intensity through a healthier channel. The goal is never simply subtraction. It is addition that makes the subtraction unnecessary. Now here's the piece of this philosophy that changes everything about how a parent responds when a child inevitably slips backward. Because every child does. In Western parenting culture, a slip is often met with disappointment, a raised eyebrow, a comment that lands as quiet shame. You were doing so well. Why did you go back to this? Japanese parenting built around Kaizen takes a radically different approach rooted in self-compassion rather than self-criticism. When a child slips back into an old pattern, the response is not shame. It is gentle, curious observation. Not judgment, but simple acknowledgement of what happened, followed by curiosity about what need the old pattern was meeting in that particular moment. This matters neurologically more than most parents realize. Shame does not produce lasting behavior change in a developing brain. It produces an internal split. Part of the child becomes a harsh internal critic. Part of the child becomes a rebellious resistor. These two parts war against each other, consuming energy that could otherwise be directed toward the actual habit being built. A child raised inside a Kaizen framework learns something profoundly different from a child raised inside a shame-based framework. They learn that a slip is information, not failure. That the old pathway, the well-worn path through the forest that the brain has walked 1,000 times, will occasionally still feel like the easiest route, especially when the new path is still young and unfamiliar. And that walking the new path again, calmly, without self-attack, is simply what happens next. Not a moral failing requiring punishment, just the next repetition. Think of a habit as a path worn through a forest by years of footsteps. The path is clear, familiar, and easy to follow, even if it no longer leads somewhere the child or the parent wants to go. You cannot erase that path by demanding the child stop walking it overnight. The grooves are too deep, but you can begin building a new path beside it, one small step at a time. At first, the new path is difficult. It requires conscious effort, careful steps over unfamiliar ground. But each time the child takes that new path, even by the smallest possible margin, the new route becomes a little clearer, a little easier, a little more like the obvious choice. Meanwhile, the old path, walked slightly less each day, slowly begins to grow over. This is precisely how a developing brain builds new behavior. Not through force, not through a single dramatic transformation. Through the patient, repeated, almost invisible accumulation of small changes that never trigger resistance, because they were never large enough to be perceived as a threat in the first place. This is what Japanese parents have understood for generations and what Western behavioral science is only now beginning to fully confirm. A child's habits are not enemies to be defeated through willpower. They are patterns that once served a purpose, and they change most reliably not through force but through patience, through small steps too gentle to provoke resistance, and through a parent's willingness to meet a slip with curiosity instead of shame. The 4-year-old whose screen time dropped by half over 6 months was never fighting his mother's rules. He was simply, quietly, walking a new path, one small step at a time, never once aware that anything was being asked of him at all. If this changed the way you think about building habits in your child, share it with one parent who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to Wise Roots Parenting because there is a lot more coming.